Everybody, welcome to another episode of My Opinion Blunt Talk. A lot of interesting things going on in the world right now. The Chaz has officially renamed itself to Chop. I will get into just a tiny bit of that in a bit, but the main thing of the day, the news that happened earlier this week, and I've been processing it, digesting it, and I want to present it here today, is the Rayshard Brooks death. For those of you who aren't familiar, Rayshard Brooks lived in Atlanta, Georgia. He was a 27-year-old man who was brought to the attention of the police because he had driven his vehicle while under the influence to a Wendy's, where he proceeded to go through the drive-thru, fell asleep in the drive-thru line. One of the staff members of the Wendy's had to call the police. So an officer, I believe his name was Officer Brosnan, showed up. He had to wake Rayshard up in his driver's seat in the car to ask him if he could please move, at which point he fell asleep again. At that point, thinking that maybe there was some inebriation happening, Officer Garrett Rolfe was called, who is a DUI certified officer. Officer Rolfe showed up. There's about 20 minutes or so of interaction between the two, doing a field sobriety check that Rayshard failed horribly. The conversation from the video I've seen, multiple sources, seemed to be fairly cordial. Everything was rolling smooth, right up, and including the part where Officer Rolfe went behind Rayshard to say, "Hey, can you please put your hands behind your back?" At which time, Rayshard decided that the best course of action was to punch Officer Rolfe in the face, throw Officer Brosnan, I believe his name is, I apologize if I have that incorrect right now, if I'm pronouncing that wrong, throw him to the ground on his head. I believe that he suffered a minor concussion, which concussions can lead to fatal results. He then grabbed and stole Officer Rolfe's taser. Rayshard started to run away, at which point he then turned around and aimed the taser backwards. Many assume towards the officers. I doubt towards the civilians. However, there were civilians around filming at the time. He fired the taser behind him, at which point Officer Rolfe fired 3 shots, 2 of which struck Rayshard in the back. Apparently, there was 2 minutes from the time they shot him that it took them to call in, secure the area, make sure everything was safe, and then starting to administer medical aid to Mr. Brooks. Now, there is some debate on why it took 2 minutes, but you know what? I don't know what sort of policies and procedures are in place that they had to go through in the case of the shooting, and to maintain their own safety and the integrity of the scene. So that's for people who are in that realm to discuss and debate, not me, and certainly not for people who don't know anything but what they read from one news article someplace. So here's the funny thing. The New York Times, in an analysis of several of the videos, reported that the flash of the taser suggests that Brooks did not fire it with any real accuracy. I love this statement. And this actually, I believe, hurts what they believe their case is. Rayshard Brooks has now physically assaulted 2 officers, dropped one on his head, which could be fatal, has stolen a weapon. It happens to be a taser, and as we'll see in a moment, taser is considered a lethal weapon by their own district attorney. All right. Well, if he fired without any real accuracy, so what was he firing at Officer Rolfe? Was he firing at Officer Brosnan? Was he firing it at one of the civilians in the area filming? Here's the thing. If that's a lethal weapon and he's just firing it and he's arbitrarily firing it anywhere, and he could be firing at a civilian. To me, that's 100% reason to take that threat down immediately. All right, so what I'd like to do is just break down a bit of the individuals involved in this for just a moment. All right, let's talk about Rayshard Brooks. Why would somebody who's only had a few drinks and about to get a DUI act what so many of us would consider irrationally? That's probably the very first thing we have to consider, right? Why would a gentleman who's just simply going to be arrested for a DUI physically assault two officers and steal their weapon? Well, Brooks had previously been convicted of false imprisonment, simple battery/family, battery simple, and felony cruelty/cruelty to children. He had pleaded guilty to these charges back in August of 2014. He's sentenced to 1 year in prison and 6 months on probation for one count and 12 months for each of the 3 other counts. After revised sentencing, he was sent back to prison in July 2016. In December 2019, a warrant was issued for his arrest, which was revoked a month later. Now, first of all, before this next part, false imprisonment and cruelty to children was on the same day. That sounds an awful lot like kidnapping to me. But I digress. So, was Rayshard on probation the night of the incident? Yes. Yes, he was. He did blow a .108. Was it .108? The legal limit of, with .08 being the legal limit. All right, so Officer Garrett Rolfe, who's he? He had been with the department since 2013, bachelor degree in criminal justice from Georgia State University. And the only thing negative that I seem to find on Rolfe had previously received a written letter of reprimand because he pointed a gun at a fleeing car in a high-speed car chase in September 2016, which resulted in the arrest of one officer, not himself. And yeah, I mean, okay, so he was involved with a bunch of other people in something where they thought it was dangerous to the general public because somebody was being dangerous to the general public. I don't know. That seems like a case-by-case sort of situation, and maybe he did or maybe he didn't make the right call along with the other officers there. So, point being, this doesn't seem like a bad guy. I see no reason to think that this guy, Officer Rolfe, had any reason to do anything out of the ordinary. I mean, he's just a DUI officer who found a suspect who was legally impaired and was following through with the law. Officer Brosnan, he just happened to be the guy that responded to the call. So I feel bad for this guy. It seems like if he has any sort of reprimand, if he's fired, anything that doesn't work itself out with him, man, I feel bad for that guy because so much of this seems cut and dry to me. Let's talk about a very interesting character, though, and what this really all comes down to. Let's go ahead and discuss Paul Howard Jr. The meat and potatoes of this really comes down to this guy. Paul Howard, the DA. This guy, it's really hard. If you wanted to find a bigger piece of shit, try to beat this.
We concluded and considered it as one of our important considerations that Mr. Brooks never presented himself as a threat. At the very beginning, he was peacefully sleeping in his car. After he was awakened by the officer, He was cooperative. So in reaching our decision, there were some considerations that we considered important. And one of the things that we noted from our evaluation was that Mr. Brooks, on the night of this incident, was calm. He was cordial. And really displayed a cooperative nature. Secondly, even though Mr. Brooks was slightly impaired, his demeanor during this incident was almost jovial. The fourth thing we noted is that Mr. Brooks was never informed that he was under arrest for driving under the influence. And this is a requirement of the Atlanta Police Department. When one is charged with DUI, the Atlanta Police Department's own procedures require that that person is informed immediately that they are under arrest.
So let's keep in mind that a taser is not a lethal weapon, except for
when an officer is pursuing a fleeing suspect, that the officer may not use deadly force to prevent escape unless the officer has probable cause to believe that the suspect poses an immediate threat of death or of serious physical injury to that officer. We concluded at the time Mr. Brooks was shot that he did not pose an immediate threat of death or serious physical injury to the officer or officers. Charged with aggravated assault of Ms. Pilgrim, and this is for pointing a taser at Mrs. Pilgrim. And as many of you all know, under Georgia law, a taser is considered as a deadly weapon.
Oh!
A taser is considered as a deadly weapon. A taser is considered as a deadly weapon.
So yeah, there was that. So this guy filed 11 charges against Officer Rolfe, including felony murder. These are the 11 charges against Officer Rolfe. The first charge is felony murder. This is a death that is as a result of an underlying felony. And in this case, the underlying felony is aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. And the possible sentences for a felony murder conviction would be life without parole, or the death penalty. Now, first of all, let's talk about what Rayshard did real quick. Let's talk about this is from the police themselves. Here's the charges he has. DUI. Obstruction ×2, which is a felony. Battery on an officer ×2. Aggravated assault ×2, which is a felony. Strong arm robbery, which is a felony, believe it or not. Possession of a firearm during a crime, felony. So this guy is a multiple felon, Rayshard, during this incident. Yet, you're going to charge Officer Rolfe with felony murder. So to get charged with felony, this is fucking asinine. And his own statements show it. He knows he is full of shit. Well, guess what? Not only is there political reasons to do this, but let's find out, is this a credible guy in his personal life? We know he's full of shit in his professional life, but wait. Ex-clerk claims she was fired for ending affair with Georgia DA Paul Howard? From the New York Post, a far-left news organization? Oh, from March 6th of this year. Not too long ago, but before any of this happened, this is the guy. This is the character and the credibility of this DA. And to top it off, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation asked, why did you file 11 charges, including the outrageous felony murder, before we even concluded our investigation? And by the way, let's clarify. Felony murder, you can only be charged with felony murder if you are in the process of committing a felony when you murder somebody. We're not talking about manslaughter. He had to mean. He specifically wanted. His intent was to kill that man while he was committing a felony. What felony did Officer Rolfe commit? Tell me. What felony did he... What protocols and standard operating procedures did Officer Rolfe break at any point from the time he arrived till the end of the incident, with the one exception that I will hear a debate for the argument of the 2 minutes or so between the shooting and the registering of medical aid, which there can be any number of reasons why it took that amount of time, so you would need to prove negligence in that area to me. My opinion, this officer did nothing wrong. My opinion is that Rayshard Brooks realized that he was going back to prison, and he was willing to risk the lives of anybody who managed to be in his way, in the way of him and freedom. And I think he did things that any regular person using common sense realizes if they did that, they would and should expect the exact same consequences to those actions. And I don't think that's just my opinion. Alright, so we're going to end today's segment with a little recap and a little fun from our Chaz project from last week. Oliver Darcy, eat your fucking heart out. So... Raz, our fun little... Well, here. The Citizens Free Press says it great. Bwahaha. Chaz Warlord Raz Simone is unhappy. And he tweeted out with this video, medics refused to help even after people in the chop begged. They let our bro bleed out for 30 minutes till he died. Fuck politics. Fuck your corrupt system. Hashtag... What did you think was going to happen? I mean, this is just absolutely idiotic, and I'm going to probably do a video regarding the Chaz chop, a longer one again. But so, just so you know, they changed it from the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone to the chop because they weren't autonomous, and this just shows that. If you guys were autonomous, you would have had your own medics. You would have had some way of dealing with this. I mean... Why didn't you just drive him to the hospital, bro? Why'd you wait 30 minutes to let him die there yelling at these guys instead of drive your bro to the hospital, bro? So, they changed the name to CHOP, which I think is the Capitol Hill Organized Protests now. Because, well, they knew they were not autonomous and they were getting a bunch of shit for it.
He needs your help. This is your job. Is this in your heart to do this?
I want to make sure that we've not been cleared.
You are clear. We're giving you the clear. We will make sure you're clear.
Well, so they have... Let's just break this down, guys. So... When the police come in there, you destroy their cars, you smash them. You guys are shooting each other in there. You have your own police. You claim that you have it all figured out, and then you're going to yell at... And the dispatchers called in. Or the units called in to get clarification, and they said no. And if they don't have... If the fire department and the ambulance doesn't have police to go in there and support them, of course they're not going in. This is... Please, keep having your live-action role-play game. I love it. I love it. This is great. This lets everybody see what happens when you actually put children in charge for a little while. Have fun. And the people living there, I feel sorry for the people there. You guys that are there who don't want this happening and this is your home, I am so sorry. And for you that are there asking for this and participating, dude, I just can't wait to see what comes next. Thank you for the video footage. Love it. You guys be safe out there.